Hey guys, welcome back to World of Warships. Today we're taking a look at the buffed Schlieffen. I haven't played this ship in a very long time, and there's been a massive change to module damage. This isn't specific to Schlieffen, but module damage rework has massively improved Schlieffen's battle performance. I think this is a much better ship to play now, thanks to no longer having to worry about your modules being permanently destroyed. Absolutely massive change that Wargaming made at this update, and I love to see it. No longer are your torpedoes going to be permanently knocked out by the time you get close enough to actually use them. You won't lose half your secondaries off of a single Conqueror salvo. Your entire build that you ran, you spent so many commander points, you poured everything in your module upgrades into the full secondary build, you're going to have a good time, and then it's just completely destroyed within the first few minutes of a battle. We don't have to deal with that anymore. This is huge. Not only that, the module damage rework has changed the HP pools on all of these secondary and main armament modules. If you didn't know, it used to be randomized HP. So if you loaded into a game, Des Moines versus Des Moines, and you got into a 1v1 at close range, bow on. I'm sure you've seen that fight before, but if you haven't, it's a pretty much an AP RNG roll into who can break each other's turrets faster. And at certain times, well, you could be very unlucky and have less than half the HP on your turrets compared to the other guy. No longer do we have to worry about that. Absolutely huge change this update. And Schlieffen is one of the best winners, of course, from this. Very squishy secondaries, very squishy torpedo tubes, and really this ship's main armament is its secondaries. I do not find these main guns good at all, as we saw from that Vincent salvo. It certainly is battle cruiser dispersion, but 1.7 Sigma. Now, correct me if I'm wrong here, but it feels like Wargaming added back the aim bugs into the game. With 14.7.1, when they had to do some hot fixing halfway through last update, it felt to me at least, when I was aiming, my shells would go where I aimed. And it seems like that's gone this update, unfortunately. So Schlieffen, very much a secondary as your main armament. But the torps are also very good. I've been playing a ton of these new German cruisers as well this update. They've gone into early access. And I gotta say, I think they're more fun than Schlieffen. I just love having control over my ship. Sitting here and watching the secondaries is cool, but wouldn't it be more fun if I was the one actually in control of them? I certainly think so. You don't get the both sides action, which we are doing here, so maybe I would elect to not actually be manually aiming them at the moment. But for now, I got it. I just wish they bring this manual secondary thing to more ships in this game. Schlieffen is absolutely awesome, although it's not all powerful these days. It's still very good, and I think this module damage rework helps it out a lot. If you remember, when Schlieffen first launched into the game years ago at this point, it was actually bugged on launch to not permanently lose its modules. They changed that, and then it got significantly worse. So we're kind of rolling that back. We're seeing what launch Schlieffen is like a little bit. And then here we're going to see the change is also buffing the main guns. I would not have had my main guns, my front two main guns, which got temporarily knocked out in the last update. Temporarily knocked out guns that you then repair. I believe it reset their reload. And you notice it did not reset my reload there, allowing me to get that last salvo into that Brennus before we go down. That's a huge change for torpedo boats. If you lose your torpedoes temporarily or in this critical state where you can't rep them immediately with your repair, it doesn't reset the cooldown. So no longer on your Shima are you stuck with another 2.5 minute cooldown on your torps as they're about to be loaded, 5 seconds from being loaded, for example, and then they get knocked out and you're reset on your reload. No longer. Absolutely incredible change. Really good work, Wargaming. If there's other ships you want me to test based on this module damage rework, let me know. Schlieffen's the first one that came to mind for me, but let me know what you think in the comments. But we got to talk about the weaknesses of Schlieffen. This ship certainly is not nearly as powerful as it once was. We're going to dive very quickly here. This is a great example of what you should not be doing in Schlieffen. Barbiano, Kaba, and Colbert are going to kill us in like a minute and a half or so. before we even get back to our next repair, yeah, we have less than 30 seconds left to live in this one. HE pressure, sap pressure to our superstructure. We have a much smaller superstructure than GK, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't take absolutely ridiculous amounts of damage. And, well, it doesn't saturate like French DD saturation either, so the damage just keeps coming. You got to play this thing very, very carefully. I guess there's like a Bourgogne salvo, but that was HE Bourgogne. It did like 5k damage or something like that. Yeah. Yeah. You got to watch out with this thing. I've had plenty of good games, but I got to do some limit testing, as you guys know. That was pretty early on in my play. And we can die very quickly in this one. So play it a lot like the new German battlecruiser line. It plays very, very similarly. However, there's one major difference. It's a battleship, not a cruiser. So you're taking up a battleship slot to play it like a cruiser. A little more passively, a little more island cover, not as exposed, and that means your flank can feel a little bit weaker. Oh my, look at our dispersion. Wow. Wow, amazing. Anyways, you're not playing it as a normal battleship would, and that can sometimes leave your flank a little bit weaker. That was maybe an underrated element of this new German battlecruiser line. It's a bit like Schlieffen, but you get to manually control your secondaries, and you're not taking the battleship slot from your flank. So you could still have like a Kremlin to tank for you on your flank, or even just a standard Montana or Yamato on your flank to provide some pressure as well. Oh, good. Unlock dispersion? Nice, nice. Blind fire is way more accurate. I don't get this aiming system. Wargaming, can we roll it back to 14.7.1, at least as far as the aim system is concerned on main guns? Because that is absolutely ridiculous. Now, also this update was the release of Sibir, which on paper looks like it's massively power creeping Schlieffen on secondary DPM. Hitting DPM at 10 kilometers, 72k on Sibir, where with Schlieffen we have 56k. But the thing to remember also, Sibir does not have the best firing angles to get all of that DPM online, and they only pen 22 millimeters, where our secondaries with IFHE do actually pen 32 millimeters. So we're even getting full pens here on Montana's bow. If we had manual secondaries, that would be less of an issue, of course. You could aim for superstructures, for example. This ship also having torps at close range is so awesome. And they're not knocked out. I mean, more than likely, this early on in the game, they wouldn't be knocked out anyway. But it's happened. Stranger things have certainly happened. Something like Libertad, for example, has 43k hitting DPM at 10 kilometers. Sounds worse than Schlieffen. However, it's got more pen, of course, but also its firing angles are even better. You get everything at 28 on 28 degrees forward and backwards on Libertad. Backwards too? Actually, wait, yeah, 23 backwards. Oh my goodness. Where Schlieffen, some of these casemate secondaries, the larger caliber ones there, you got to give 56 degrees of broadside. At a reasonable 30 degrees, you're still getting like 85, 32 degrees, you're getting 85%. So you're not getting that full theoretical DPM, which is interesting because it means this new battlecruiser line seems to have better secondaries, or at the very least, it does feel like the secondaries are similar to Schlieffen. And we just secondary AI aura damage down that poor Salem. Wouldn't it be more interesting if I was the one in control? I wouldn't be nearly as accurate in piloting my ship. Where did that salvo? What happened to that turret? This aiming system, man. I don't understand it. Anyways, back to these secondaries. We're gonna not do much damage to this Napoli because they're aiming for his broadside belt armor center mass. As soon as he angles, though, suddenly some of our secondaries start to hit his superstructure, start to hit his bow, but not when he's broadside. Having manual control is so much more interesting. Here, for example, I wouldn't get to just click on daring and get a ton of secondary damage into him while also seeing that I just can't avoid this torpedo, unfortunately. But I'm not paying attention to daring, and look at his HP now. I think manual control would be so beneficial to this game. That way, the automated damage would be so much reduced. Any damage you are taking, you know, is from a player-controlled armament. I just think that is so much better. Ah, here we go. Now our torps are knocked out. And you can see both examples. Looks like it's a 45-second cooldown for the grayed out ones that you can't manually repair. And then it's much shorter for the torp tubes that you can just hit your repair key and get them back. So very, very cool mechanic wargaming overall. I had a fun time playing Schlieffen again, although I don't think it was quite as fun as those new battle cruisers. It's certainly better in a Brawl when you're dealing with ships that can overmatch you. Also, some of that HE spam. We do have 32mm deck armor rather than the 30mm, so we are still tankier than that new line. But we don't have the secondary range. We don't have the control over those secondaries either, so they're under-leading this Kaba just a little bit. Now, there's no guarantee I can aim the secondaries at these ranges into a Kaba anyway, but I'd be in control of it. I would be me missing. I think that's what it comes down to for me with secondaries. I get that they can be frustrating. Automated aura damage that is unavoidable in some people's eyes. I think it would be... For me, I can see that as a frustration, and I can feel that myself when I'm playing some other ships too. But I think if it's manually controlled, I'm a little bit less concerned about it, maybe? Of course, we would have to tone down the DPM, up the accuracy for me to really enjoy that. But I think this is a step in the right direction. For now, though, module damage rework update 14.8 is definitely a step in the right direction. Getting rid of detonations at the end of last year, this module damage rework, we're getting some map balance changes, we're getting new events to the game that aren't just $150, $200 of paid content, and that's all the exciting new stuff. Plenty of content for free players. I don't know what changed Wargaming, but the last couple updates has been absolutely incredible. Keep it coming, because if this trend line continues, World of Warships might just be in a better state than it's ever been in a few years. And changes like this also make me a little bit curious about different builds on these ships, as I've always done on these secondary battleships, but especially on Schlieffen. I had to take things like preventative maintenance. I had to take things like secondary and AA mounts survivability. But I'm trying damage control party mod 1 here, otherwise pretty similar to what I've always done with the Schlieffen. And here, I'm actually going to Demo Expert instead of Preventive Maintenance. And I still felt like I had a ton of secondary firepower. I had my torps generally when I needed them. And that's without buffing their survivability at all. That's huge. That's a huge change. Otherwise, one of the reasons that I never really played this ship that much is I always felt like what I built for, all these look at how many commander points is just built for these secondaries here, giving up even things like fire prevention. A lot goes into a secondary build. You're putting all your eggs in one basket, I suppose, would be the analogy. And then they all get knocked out just by a passing HE salvo or two. Very frustrating to deal with. No longer. I'm so happy about this. And yeah, this is the build that I guess I'd recommend these days. Schlieffen can be hard to play, though, of course. It is much more played like a battle cruiser instead of a battleship. And oh, it's actually a 50mm deck armor. It's been a very long time since I've played Schlieffen. Whoops. I think I said 32 during the video. I'm going to have to go back and correct that, I suppose, with a little asterisk or something. But 27mm here, and a nice gigantic icebreaker, so a little harder to deal damage to this thing when it is angled compared to the battle cruiser line, even though it does need to play in a similar way. Yes, it is a much smaller superstructure than GK with its, oh my, look at this, it's just disgusting how big that superstructure weak spot is, but it's still going to die very quickly if you put it in the wrong spot. And while I haven't played much Libertad recently either, Sabir is a great example of a ship that can just sit there and soak damage for a ridiculous amount of time. Schlieffen, of course, cannot be played like that, which makes it more interesting. It's got some weaknesses, but it also has some strengths that you can exploit and have an absolutely great time, especially now that those strengths don't get permanently knocked out randomly and you're left frustrated partway through the battle. But let me know what you think in the comments down below. Thank you very much for watching, and have a great rest of your day.